Hey guys, welcome back to NBA Orb. Today we'll talk about 7 of the biggest fights in NBA history. Let's head into it. Number 7. Alonzo Mourning vs. Larry Johnson. When an NBA player fights, violence may not be the only thing that comes to light. The fight between Alonzo Mourning and Larry Johnson is a notable example. The key sequence took place when Jeff Van Gundy entered the fray and wrapped himself around the Miami Heat star's legs to try and stop it from escalating. Those incidents between the New York Knicks and the Miami Heat remind fans of both sides how NBA playoff fights might take a diabolical turn. Heat center Alonzo Mourning and the Knicks power forward Larry Johnson kick-started a brawl that involved both benches. The incident took place after the game had finished, but both players were intent on causing as much harm as possible. With Mourning and Johnson throwing air punches at each other, Van Gundy flew in from the bench and threw himself around the Heat center's legs, trying to put an end to the fight. Van Gundy held on for dear life even as Mourning continued to swing wildly, and it remains as distinguished precedents among all basketball fights. Luckily for Van Gundy, he did not get trampled during the melee and emerged unscathed. Number 6. The Charles Barkley Shaq fight. The headline "Shaq fights Brad Miller" didn't come to a surprise for many, but another story came off quite differently when it didn't involve the power forward Charles Barkley, who never won a ring. Seeing how Shaquille O'Neal and Barkley get along with each other at the moment, one might wonder, could Shaq and Barkley fight in real life? But they did, as things were not always rosy between them. The two rivals were involved in quite a few on-court altercations during their time together in the NBA. One particular incident stands out though. Barkley, while driving to the basket, gets fouled hard by Shaq. Taking offense, Barkley hurled the ball straight at Shaq's head with quite some force. Shaq then retaliated by taking a swing at Barkley, only just missing. The two then ended up wrestling each other to the ground, which took some sting out of the encounter, defining an unfading view of the Barkley-Shaq fight. Number 5. Bill Laimbeer vs. Robert Parrish. Bill Laimbeer gained a reputation for being a nasty player on the court, constantly jawing at opponents and making dirty moves to gain an advantage. However, he met his match in Robert Parrish during a game between the Pistons and Celtics in 1987. While fighting for a rebound, Parrish got overly physical and threw multiple solid punches at Laimbeer, leaving the Pistons man stunned. Parrish incredibly did not get ejected for his involvement in the incident, but he did get suspended for the following game after the incident and was reviewed by the league office. Parrish went on to speak about the infamous punch during an interview in 2012, saying, "Bill always crossed the line. I had enough of all the dirty play. It was the first and only time I ever lost my composure during a game." Should the statement be read as simple as it sounds? The ugly situation on the court enriched a short list of the NBA's biggest fights. Number 4. Miami Heat vs. New York Knicks. Games between the Miami Heat and the New York Knicks have been historically filled with untoward accidents, and things come to a head when the two sides clashed in the 1997 playoffs. While Brown and Ward were fighting to secure a rebound following a free throw attempt for the Heat, Brown shoved Ward into a row of reporters sitting at courtside. This led to a huge melee with both sets of benches getting involved. Ultimately, after the players were separated and peace was restored, 4 New York players were handed suspensions. Allen Houston, Patrick Ewing, Larry Johnson, and John Starks were all suspended for leaving the Knicks bench and getting involved in one of the best basketball fights. And the suspensions were upheld by a U.S. District Court judge.
This league has come to where 6'11" guys are picking on 6-foot guys and just without regard to.
Number 3. Kobe Bryant vs. Chris Childs. Kobe Bryant was involved in some of the biggest basketball fights over the course of his NBA career. A notable one came in 2000 when the New York Knicks squared off against the Los Angeles Lakers. With under a minute left in the third quarter, Bryant, the great trash talker, allegedly said something offensive to Childs, who was guarding the Lakers guard at the time. Childs immediately retaliated and shoved Bryant, which drew a response from the Laker. However, little did Bryant know what was about to unfold. Childs, who was seeing red at the time, unfurled a huge 1-2 that landed square on Kobe's jaw. Kobe was never one to back down from a fight, and despite being stunned by the punches, decided to launch himself at Childs. However, he was restrained by his teammates and 2 NBA officials. In the aftermath of the incident, Childs, who was suspended for 2 games and fined $15,000, while Kobe was suspended for 1 game and fined $5,000. Childs, in a recent interview, explained what went down between the two players.
His jumper is short. Oh, and now a fight breaks out between Kobe Bryant and Chris Childs.
Number 2. The Bird and Irving fight, arguably the most famous and best NBA fight, took place in 1984 when two epic performers of the game, Larry Bird and Julius Erving, decided to let their fists do the talking. The Bird was in the midst of a sensational game, having scored 42 points in the 30 minutes on the court. However, he made headlines for what followed soon after. The Bird appeared to throw an elbow at Erving and was called for an offensive foul. This sparked a melee with the players from both sides getting involved. After things settled down, both players were fined $7,500, which at the time was the second highest fine for a player conduct in league history at the time. Number 1. Denver Nuggets vs. New York Knicks. The brawl between Denver Nuggets and the New York Knicks back in 2006 went down in history as the time. The brawl between the Denver Nuggets and the New York Knicks back in 2006 went down in history at the time as the most penalized on-court fight in the NBA. The fight began when Knicks guard Marty Collins committed a flagrant foul on the Nuggets guard J.R. Smith, with the game done and dusted. Nuggets players took offense, and this resulted in a large-scale brawl between the two teams, with multiple players getting involved. Punches were thrown, words were exchanged, and the fight even spilled into the stands. Carmelo Anthony, who was the NBA's leading scorer at the time, had to be restrained by his teammates, but still managed to break free and throw a huge punch at Collins. Thankfully, the incident didn't escalate beyond that, as officials managed to get things under control. However, heavy sanctions were put into place and each of the 10 players on the court was ejected. Both teams fined $500,000 each, and the 7 players involved were handed a 47-game suspension. All of these tell why this unwanted happening has to be among the best NBA fights. Anthony received a 15-game suspension for his involvement in the incident. This brings us to the end of our video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit like if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any of our videos in the future. Also, watch the 2 videos on your screen because I'm sure you'll love them. With that, I'll see you in the next video.